The artist, known as Plumb, has had chart-topping hits across multiple genres, including Christian rock, electronica, dance. She took a hiatus from studio recording to care for her young children. Now she's back with an album called Need You Now. Plumb's music has also been featured in major motion pictures and TV shows. Tiffany Arbuckle Lee, also known as Plumb, joins me in the studio. Plumb, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
Where did the name Plumb come from?
Plum came from a song by Suzanne Vega called My Favorite Plum. And Suzanne's just a big influence of mine. Most people know her for the Tom's Diner song or the Luca song, but she's someone I loved in high school. And when it came time to call myself something other than Tiffany, for obvious reasons, I just decided to come up with my own little alter ego, if you will. I wanted a name that kind of captured a band, because live, that is what it is. It's a female fronted thing, and I'm the songwriter and the voice, but I'm not a one-woman show. And so I felt like Plum was an identity that was suitable to me, but also to a band, relevant to a band feel as well. So it kind of served both purposes. And so I was listening to the song My Favorite Plum on repeat one night, and then I was just like, Plum, I think I'll run with that. And then my producer thought it would be a good idea to add a B at the end for a different meaning than just the fruit, you know? So plum meaning true, as opposed to a fruit that you can buy in the produce section of a grocery store.
I understand that you initially wanted to go to nursing school. I see that did not work out for you.
That did not work out for me. I was a horrible student. I was very social. I was great in the communal aspect of high school and really involved with friendships and dating and very much alive and loved going, but the actual studious aspect was not my strong point. And I remember being interested in nursing for a lot of reasons. I still am really drawn to medicine. Like when I'm visiting someone in the hospital, every aspect of it's really interesting to me. And if someone feels sick, I'm always kind of trying to figure out how could we fix that? Like maybe, what have you eaten today, and what have you been eating, and have you tried this vitamin? And
so you like do nursing light?
I do.
On the side.
I do. I mean, just like from a natural perspective, like I'm always trying to figure out things to help fix a problem. But I understood you had to be pretty good in science, and I failed chemistry twice, and I just felt discouraged by that. And so I graduated high school still thinking that might pan out in some way. Like maybe I would just be a physician's assistant or something. And I just kept getting offers to sing backup for this artist and backup for this artist.
I was going to ask you, how did you start the musical career?
I have sung since I was 3, just as a hobby, more or less. Just like someone plays a sport in high school, I just sang every chance I could, whether it was chorus at school, choir at church, if there was a 4-H talent show or a county fair talent show. Anytime there was just something related to show your talent, I always signed up and sang, and did a lot of singing at home and in the car and driving my family crazy. And I just loved it. So, but I never, ever thought about that being a career at all. Like that was just something I loved to do. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked a job that he complained about every day of his life. And so my understanding of a job is something you do, you don't enjoy. And so I love to sing. How could I ever do that as a job? And when I got asked to record this kind of custom EP thing, this writer had all these original songs, none of which that I wrote, but he said, you could sing on them and you'd have something at least original with your voice on it if anyone ever wanted to have you come perform at a coffee shop or, a club or whatever. And so I did it, and it was okay. I mean, I don't share it with many people because at this point it's kind of embarrassing, but at the time it was okay. And that, I guess, landed in someone's hands that had a band and said, well, we need a new backup singer. Maybe she could do it. And so I did it because they were coming locally to where I lived. And so that's kind of the connection. And then,
but still you weren't thinking, this is my new career.
No,
this is it. This is what I'm going to do.
I had just graduated high school, and I was working at a bank as a teller because I didn't really have a strong pull to a couple universities that I'd been accepted to that were gracious enough to accept me in my 2.99 GPA or whatever it was. And so I just didn't. I just paused and worked as a bank teller. And while I was doing that opportunity to sing backup came. And then lots of them followed, of just various artists needing someone to sing back up in the studio or on this record or this demo. And so college just kept getting put off to the side, and music was somehow making ends meet. And I did teach gymnastics and nannied and babysat and sold my clothes to consignment and ate a lot of rice and beans. I mean, there was definitely not like milk and honey flowing in cash-wise, but I was making it. And then I got a call from a record label interested in me as an artist, and I didn't know what to say, except I just said, sure. And I kind of signed my life away, and one thing led to another, and here we are. So, yeah.
Plumb is in the studio with me. She's an award-winning singer and songwriter. Her album is called Need You Now. So for someone who's never heard your music, describe it to them.
I would say it is sophisticated pop, rock, electronica. And when I say sophisticated, I feel like we try to be surprising, and we try to be progressive, and we try to be relevant in the studio, and try new things and take risks and talk about things lyrically, or try something musically that's not necessarily been done before, not because we're trying to be some pioneer in, the use of a loop, but we just, my producer and I have a really great relationship. He's one of my best friends in music. We both got started together. No one had ever heard of him. No one had ever heard of me. And we just didn't have any rules. And so we just tried making music in a different way that maybe everyone else was making it. And we've continued that and just not really had a real rule or formula to what we do. And so I think there's an element of sophistication to that, because it's fresh and it's different. And at the same time, I want it to always be relevant, but I also want it to always be surprising.
So who do you think your music most appeals to?
Definitely the elderly. No, I'm just joking.
Very hip elderly.
I have to say, my demographic has grown drastically in the last few years. When I first came out as an artist, it was definitely 11-year-olds to 30. And now, I think partly because I'm a mother and I have young children, I will have these 5 and 6 and 7-year-olds at the stage, coming to the merch table afterwards with their mom, who's about my age, and they're both loving it together. So there's this like 5 to 40 thing, but then literally 60 and 70-year-olds that are there, maybe bringing their teenage grandchild or whatever, both also connect. And so I feel like musically, it has a really big bridge that a really young child is drawn to certain elements of it sonically and musically, all the way to grandma.
The title track of your album, Need You Now.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. What does that mean?
It's a prayer. It's not the traditional prayer where you quietly go in secret and close your door and get alone with God and pray. It's the kind that you shout at the top of your lungs, help. And the good thing is he always answers, because he never leaves. And it was inspired out of a real dark time in my life that I've started struggling with panic and anxiety attacks. I still struggle with them some. But just being in the bathroom stall of my junior high and high school, feeling not suicidal, but if this is going to be my everyday, if this is going to be my life, I don't want to live. Almost wishing doctors could figure out what it was, and that it would be terminal, so I could just be done, or that they could fix it and find out what it was. And there was never anything really hard-lined as to what it was, and it was, labeled more or less. I would have these really debilitating stomach aches, and so they would just kind of label it IBS, and maybe you're anxious about something. And that might have been true, and it might still be true, but that doesn't make you feel a lot of hope when you're trapped in the bathroom stall, not sure why you feel the way that you do. And so...
And debilitating in the sense that you couldn't go places.
Socially paralyzing, just because I would fear the outcome of being fearful. I would fear the outcome of being anxious. I don't think I'm going to go on this date or this missions trip or this camp or this event.
Because you might have an anxiety attack.
Right. It's like I want to go. And had a doctor one time ask my mom, because all the tests were coming back healthy, if I could be a hypochondriac. And my mom was really stern with him of no, like she is embarrassed by this. And when it happens, she hides in a bathroom, or she just cancels her plans and just tells people, I couldn't make it. And they're things that I know she wants to be at or do or be a part of. And so, it was socially paralyzing, and it was just physically where you can't leave the bathroom stall. You can't fake it. You have to crouch over and pray for relief. And God was the only, even though praying and crying out to him didn't magically make the pain go away, there was this sense of hope that, okay, God's word says he'll never leave me, that I'm not alone. So the fact that I'm not alone and that God's with me gave me a sense of peace amidst this horrible pain and anxiety. And I just, as the years have passed and we were writing the song, I wanted there to be a song that said out loud, it's okay to cry for help. It's okay to just scream it at the top of your lungs. And the good thing is he never grows tired of our need for him. He always shows up. He never leaves. And that song went on to mean more to me now than it ever has been, because the darker the time, the harder the cry for help. And so there's been quite a few things that have happened to me that have just made those panic attacks in high school almost look like a cakewalk. And so I know, having experienced something totally different than what the song was written about, that this song really does relate to a vast audience of people in their darkest moment of, hey, I know I need God, but I really need him right now more than ever. This song kind of gives them permission to just scream it.
Can we hear it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, everybody's got a story to tell, and everybody's got a wound to be healed. I wanna believe there's beauty here, 'cause oh, I get so tired of holding on. I can't let go, I can't move on. I wanna believe there's meaning here. How many times have you heard me cry out, God, please take this? How many times have you given me strength to just keep breathing? Oh, I need you, God, I need you now. Standing on a road I didn't plan, and wondering how I got to where I am. I'm trying to hear that still small voice. I'm trying to hear above the noise. How many times have you heard me cry out, God, please take this? How many times have you given me strength to just keep breathing? Oh, I need you, God, I need you now. Oh, I walk through the shadows, and I'm so afraid. Please stay right beside me with every single step I take. How many times have you heard me cry out? And how many times have you given me strength? How many times have you heard me cry out, God, please take this? How many times have you given me strength to just keep breathing? need you now. I need you now.
Tiffany Arbuckle Lee, known as Plumb. She's an award-winning singer and songwriter, singing the title track of her album, Need You Now. You heard Justin Saunders on guitar. That is so incredibly powerful.
Thank you.
You know, there's a woman that wrote a comment on Amazon about this song, and she says this: I've been battling a rare disease that almost took my life this past year. When I heard this song, I felt as if it had been written for me, and every time I listen to it, I feel renewed strength in my battle to kick this disease to the curb. Thank you, Tiffany, for your amazing words and music.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow.
And you had mentioned, you know, that in the dark times, and that this really is your prayer. I know that you had also struggled with your marriage for a while.
Yeah.
Are you able to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. After the song was written, the record was finished. It was the Christmas of 11, and we were just kind of taking a break and going to release the record in 2012. And fast forward, the record didn't come out until 2013, because a couple days after Christmas that year, my husband and I separated. And it was a shock to both of us, and there's a lot of details as to how that happens. I think what's more important is that it happened, and when you're in the midst of something, figuring out exactly how you got there is really important, but immediately you're there, and you need to be sensitive to being there. And we were separated for almost 6 months, on the verge of divorce. We have 3 young kids, and
You thought at the time that you could actually get divorced?
Absolutely, yeah. We had gotten so busy and so much good competing with what was best for our home that we were really, in the busyness, unaware of the disconnect here or the problem there. And little by little, things just were building up. And I guess if you can imagine this clear sheet of glass that's just really thick and sturdy, and you just think it's bulletproof. You get a few nicks and dings in it, and you think it's not really that big of a deal, but eventually all those little tiny cracks and all those little nicks, they start to connect, and they literally, it just shatters. And you think, I thought this was bulletproof. I thought this could never happen to me and to us. And so, long story short, there we were, separated, and after several months, one of the most important things that happened was we went to a marriage and family therapist. She was a Christian, and literally just God used her in an incredible way. And we were able to surround ourselves with a community of people, which this is kind of like my top 2 things, is to go to therapy and to have a community around you that's rooting your marriage on, not just you, and not having that girlfriend that's, siding with you, or him having those guys and friends that, is bad-mouthing the wife behind your back. And literally having a community of people that were saying, no, we're not going to accept that. You're just going to walk away from this. There's too much good here. There's too much good. There's too much history, too much value, and it's worth saving. And so little by little, day after day, sometimes you just felt hopeless. And I realized that there's always hope. No matter how hopeless you feel, there's always hope. And on the other side of some of those what seemed like hopeless days would be just this little drop of hope, just this little bit of good that you would see shining through literally just what seemed like blackness, just a little pierce of light. And that would give me the courage to maybe just move forward another day or
and
another
do you feel
week.
that this strengthened your faith?
Oh, hands down.
Because some people go through hard times and it says, well, there you go, God's not here.
Right. I went through that time only to fall in love with him, God, that is, for the first real time in my life. I thought I loved him until I was at the bottom and all I had was him to reach for. And when I say all I had, like when my marriage was crumbling, it drags a lot of other things down with it. And so there was a lot of financial and health and relational things that were literally being sucked into all of that at the same time. And you literally felt like short of something happening to my children, there was nothing worse that I could imagine happening. Someone being diagnosed with cancer is awful. But someone saying, I don't love you and I don't want you, to me is worse. And so there were days when we both now talk about how there were days that we'd both kind of hoped the other one would maybe just pass away. So we could just tell our kids that, mommy passed away or daddy passed away, where we wouldn't really have to like look them in the face and say, we don't love each other anymore. And so you're going to be the brunt of that. And sorry. And so, but as God is all the time, perfect in his timing and in his ways, when we finally got out of our own ways, got out of his way, and quit making it about us, and we were willing to do whatever it took. And it's so easy to talk about when you have come on the other side of something, but it's really hard in the middle of that. So nothing I'm saying do I think is easy for someone that might relate to my story whose marriage is in crisis. This took 6 months that felt like 6 years. But through counseling, through a community of people willing to speak hard truth in our lives, through some amazing literature that we read, some great books. Gary Thomas wrote a book called Sacred Marriage. Tim Keller wrote a book called The Meaning of Marriage. Both excellent resources for somebody in a crisis. And going through that and then seeing little glimpses of hope that gave us a little courage to keep moving forward. While we were separated, we went from being separated and living in different places and him having his time with the kids in mind with them separately and talking to lawyers to spending time together with the kids together without him living in the same place. And then he moved into the guest room. And then, and eventually we held hands for the first time in 6 months. And little by little, that marriage was reconciled. And the restoration process can take a lifetime, but we've had a really beautiful story of restoration. We remarried each other a year after we held hands for the first time. We remarried each other all over again. And that, I feel like in a very short span of time, I just told you this beautiful fairy tale story, but that story is only beautiful because of how good God is. And that's not because I'm predicting for everyone that if they do it the way I did it, that it's going to work out exactly that way for them. Everybody's story is different and they are different and their spouse is different. And I know every story doesn't turn out like this, but I knew halfway through when I was willing to do whatever it took, that no matter what happened, divorced or not, that I could look my children, and so could he, in the eye and say, we tried really hard to make this work. We didn't just give up because of this or this or this. And so I think sometimes when you give something the space it needs, you'll be really amazed at what healing can happen. And I compared the other day to something, or earlier today, about how, something left in darkness can really grow some really nasty stuff. But when sunlight it's exposed to that, the vitamin D in the sun really heals things. I mean, think about a bathroom that doesn't have a window in it versus a bathroom that does. Like the natural sunlight that comes into a bathroom is extremely helpful to a place that has a lot of germ. And I think about how we keep silent so often about the things that bother us or that hurt us, or even in our more specifically to our marriage. We just don't feel like it's worth talking about or pointing out or having a discussion. And the longer you keep something to yourself, the worse it gets. And I think even if someone can just start by saying it out loud to themselves, writing it in a journal, maybe then getting to the point where they could tell God about it, maybe their spouse, maybe a counselor, maybe a friend or a pastor or whoever. But the longer you leave something unspoken and left in darkness and quiet, it grows exponentially into something toxic. And that's what we had done. We had just let some things become toxic, and now we've bleached them, so to speak. So,
Plum, what are your hopes for the future?
I am ecstatic about how touring is going right now, and I'm really hopeful about the future of this record, although it's just come out this year, that I don't think this record is a short-lived project. I think that we've just scratched the surface of some things that are going to happen for it, and I've had some opportunities with authoring a book and speaking about some things unrelated more to music than versus more specifically to marriage and family and children, because of what I just told you, of just how I don't have a PhD in this and that and the other.
You don't even have a nursing degree.
No, I don't even have a nursing degree. I didn't study early childhood development or marriage and family therapy, but I went through a marital crisis and come out on the other side with the greatest marriage I could ever ask for. And I have 3 kids that despite all my mistakes and hiccups and blunders, I have 3 really amazing kids, and none of that's because I know how to do it right. It's because I've on Facebook, I even say that I went to the school of hard knocks. It's just life experience has taught me a lot of things that I'm willing and ready to share with people, and it not have the PhD at the end of my name to say I know it all, because I don't. But I know what I've experienced.
What are your hopes for your children's future?
I want them to find something that they love as much as I love music, and do it, whether it pays them a dime or not. I want them to see a really healthy relationship and want that for themselves later in life. And I want them to be willing to say they're sorry and willing to say they've made mistakes. And I want them to be honest, and I want them to be okay with being broken and be able to celebrate being restored. And because probably unintentionally, I grew up in a home where you kind of had to look like you had it all together, act like you had it all together, when we weren't. And so for me and my husband to go through what we went through was kind of a double-edged sword of, it was already painful enough to go through marital crisis, but on the other side of that, of just the pride of everyone else in our family's involvement, my family more specifically, of just, we're not a family that gets divorced. We're not a family that has...
Right, we just don't do that.
We just don't do that. We've got it together. We've got the answers, so why are we falling apart? And I think there's been a lot of freedom in being able to say, you know what, I don't have it together. My marriage is not perfect, and our finances weren't perfect, and our health wasn't perfect, and we're not perfect. And it almost like all the pressure kind of came off to be perfect because you were so exposed as to not having it together. So I hope that for my children, that in a positive way, they can just say, you don't have to be forgiven. You just have to be real. And God can use that.
So Plum, what song from this album do you want us to close the show with?
You know, I think I'd like to do One Drop, because it tells that story of how it really captures the essence of where I'm at now. Need You Now has a real darkness to it because it's about pain, but One Drop, still about hope, is saying it only takes a little bit for that to grow into something amazing. And I feel like I had a little bit of hope one day when we were separated, and then it grew, and now, you know, we've reconciled, and it's cheerful, it's happy, and I just feel like it captures where hope can take you.
Tiffany Arbuckle Lee, known as Plumb, is an award-winning singer and songwriter. Her album is called Need You Now. Plum, thanks so much for being on the program.
Thanks for having us.